So I'm very happy to welcome you, and I think it's really very important for the international audience to know more about what happens in China. Of course, everyone knows that it's certainly the most promising market for the coming years, but it's certainly not the most simple market if we are talking about distribution or production. And so we are very happy to have a large number of big experts of that country who will be able to share with you their experience and their perspective on this market. So I will not talk longer, and I will ask Patrick Frater from Variety, which is our first moderator, to come on the stage and to introduce the panelists of this first session. Thank you, Patrick.
Thank you very much.
And of course, I want to thank all the panelists, you and all the team and my team of the Marché du Film who helped to build that event. Thank you.
Thank you, Jérôme. This microphone is working. I'm determined it's going to work. Please, can we have the panelists up on stage straight away now? Thank you very much. So we have 4 panelists who are going to join me in a discussion that lasts roughly an hour. But before that, we have Mr. Ho from Deloitte, who's going to actually give us a 10-minute macro overview, and then he's going to retire to the front row of the audience and be here available to join in with the Q&A, which will take place about an hour later. So here we go. Thank you very much.
Excellent. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Po Ho. I'm from Deloitte, China. Promise you it's going to be relatively brief. So I have about 9-ish slides to show you, and starting from the market size. It's not a surprise that if you look at the right hand, China is already the world's second largest film market in the world. And this is a market not just big, but also growing rapidly. If you look at 2014 data, it's growing at 36% in terms of box office. In reality, this market contributes the majority of the worldwide growth in terms of net value. And yeah, we consultants love charts like this, so bear with me for a moment. So when we talk about film market, it's not just box office. There are other things. There are facilities and there are export. Some key features. First is growth. And growth not only in box office, but also in advertisement revenue and other peripheral incomes. And in the same time, the supply side, the screens, China is seeing 5,000 screens a year. So every day you count 16 new screens being set up to fulfill the needs. And interestingly, if you look at the movie export, however, China is not yet a major exporter, but rather more like a consumer of the movie business. And if we look at how people buy, on the right-hand side, you see the surge of online ticketing. And with the help of the smartphone, and we see some of the panelists today probably will mention the mobile-based ticketing. Very quickly, the way people buy ticket will be moving towards internet and the mobile internet. Now already exceeding 50%, and it's very quickly going to probably become a world leader in online movie ticketing. And this is the chart talking about the how the market is split between domestically produced ones and imported films. Interestingly, in the past, that level, you see the green one, the light green one, and the yellowish green one, they crisscross each other, almost like 50 to 50. And we expect that starting from now and 14 and 15, probably import movie are going to grow faster. And when we also took a look at what people watch. Interestingly, the type of movie Chinese people watch more are quite different from the rest of the world. In US, you see that the sci-fi is a big thing and action is a big thing. And sci-fi, for example, in US took about 40% of the market share. But Chinese people, they're not really into sci-fi. They love romance and love stories and comedies. I don't know why, but well, I think two things are probably important. Probably, sci-fi and actions in the U.S. are very male-dominated, while Chinese males are spend most of the time playing computer games. And also in China, something very unique that the most of the attractive slots are during the Chinese New Year, May holiday, October holiday, and people are in holiday mood. Nobody want to look at a lot of bloody actions. So there's probably some cultural differences in China with the rest of the world that any importers need to be careful of. And the value chain. Sorry for the busy chart, but I think it's common in China as well as the rest of the world. In terms of content creation, content distribution, and the theatrical show in China, upstream the production part is very scattered. There's an argument between what is king, the content is king or the channel is king. In China, at least historically, the channel is the king. Whoever controls the slots and the cinema lines, they control what is being shown on the best slots. But that trend has been probably going to be slightly changed a little bit as we see some of the heavyweights like Wanda, etc. They are moving upstream from cinema line owners to distributors to producers. And similar trends happens in the internet space. We'll talk about in more detail later. And digital. I called barbarians at the gate, but maybe they're not. It's probably it could be a benign barbarian. There could be an angel at the gate. We see the new wave of investors from different parts of the world other than film industry, like from real estate developers like Wanda, like internet tycoons like Baidu and Tencent, Alibaba. They start to back up this industry. For a long while, movie industry has been growing, but with high risk in terms of investment return. And with the new capital coming in from internet, from real estate, from other industries, there might be new ways to make it not just a fast-growing market, but also a profitable one, more profitable one. With this, I'm going to end my 10-minute session with a little bit of Deloitte. So we do audit. About 1/3 of our business is from auditing, and the other 2/3 are actually from investment banking and consulting. And there are actually some of our clients, some of our audit and some of our consulting clients on this panel, and I'm happy to share with you my observation and knowledge from my colleagues. I will call it a short. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much indeed. Please join us again in a little while when we will be doing the audience interaction section with the Q&A. We've had a couple of introductions already. Jerome doing the diplomacy, Mr. Ho doing the numbers piece for us. I'm going to keep the remaining introductions as short as possible. There's one piece of housekeeping I forgot already, and if you haven't already worked it out, the headphones and automatic translation devices have channel 1 for Chinese and channel 2 for English, I believe, and if it's not, it's the other way around. We are going to be only in English and only in Putonghua today. There's no Cantonese and there's no French. So we have 2 languages. My panel goes from my left towards me with Jeffrey Chan from Bona Film Group, and also Distribution Workshop, wearing 2 hats. Mr. Lin Ning from WeChat Movies. Mr. Chen Xijie from SMG Pictures, one of the largest companies in China with many different interests and activities. State-backed enterprise, but that means that they operate like sometimes like the state and sometimes like a private company. Very interesting to examine a little bit of how that works. And Kerry Cheng from Wanda right next to me. I've warned everybody what the first question is. So everybody knows what this first question is. And it's a kind of a follow-up to what Mr. Ho has just been talking about. We hear incredible numbers about China. Some people tell us that there's 15 new cinema screens per day coming on stream. I remember the head of China Film Group used to tell us not so long ago that there were 200 cities in China, each having a population of 1 million people which didn't have any cinemas. Extraordinary figures. Other people tell us that the box office in China is going to overtake America in 2 years' time, 2017. So my first question to everybody is the same one. It kind of serves as an introduction. What is your favorite anecdote about the size and scale and growth of China? And Jeffrey Chen, you're going first.
I would say that you asked the question is a favorite number, right?
Yeah.
About, my favorite, I won't say it's my favorite. First, and just a qualification of what I'm going to say is I'm personally most grateful about being able to be part of this growth and this business, in the Chinese film business. But if I have to quote a key number to all this, it would be 64. 64 means actually there are only maximum number of imported films every year into China is 64. 34 sharing theatrical plus 30 others, so-called flat fiat and 90 others imported films. Because that is the key to, as it was actually mentioned in one of my earlier panel in this market by one of the panelists, is because if you imagined, so all these big numbers, box office number like Fury 7 and all this, that which is so amazing, is partially because there are only 64 of those imported films into China. And these 64 films account for 50% or more, depending on the year, of the annual box office. And it's all because there are only 64 of those there. We have all this talk about co-productions that you need, because that's the maximum number of films. So if you want to tap into China with any foreign filmmakers, co-production is the key. So that's why I picked 64.
Sorry, talking into my glasses there, that didn't help. That was an interesting and very quirky personal number. Thank you, Jeffrey. I'm going to come back to you on that one, because on that other panel that you mentioned the other day, you were also saying that China is a very normal market. Now you've just shown us it's a little bit of an exceptional market when it comes to distribution. Mr. Lin, I think you've grabbed the microphone, so off you go.
I'm going to speak Chinese because my English is terrible. So if you would bear with me and put on your headsets. The number that I am interested in reflects the amount of tickets that have been sold. It's more than 50%. Especially if we look at this new age of mobile communication, including social network, the internet. Viewers have many choices in terms of what films they can see. And also the viewers can decide on when or what content he or she wishes to purchase. So we see that this is a definite trend. It's a very clear trend. As far as we've noticed from WeChat, the largest social network in China, to create a link between us and the film industry is very important. As of April last year, we started pushing this collaboration. And every month we notice a growth of 30%. So on average, about 300,000 people through our portal purchase movie tickets. So if we look at China, about 7% of tickets are being purchased through the portal of WeChat. And this number is growing constantly. So we will see the impact of mobile communication on ticket sales. We will have more data, more numbers that will help us address the issue why Chinese people love to watch romantic movies, or why do they choose certain movies to watch during the Chinese New Year period. So I think this link or this collaboration between ticket sales and social network will help us answer these questions. So I think as social network reaches more deeply into individual households, we'll look at the growth of the different cities in China, because you know there are many, many cities, but the economics situations of cities vary tremendously. Some smaller villages or cities don't even have movie theaters. But with the growth of the internet, we'll see the Chinese film market grow to hundreds of billions of dollars.
And this is exactly what I wanted, because everyone's response to this question is a rather personal response. It's great. Thank you. Mr. Chen, we're ready for you.
I think the moderator raised this question in the hope of getting a precise answer from us. What do we actually feel about the Chinese film market? But of course, we're not going to give you a direct answer, because we want to maintain the mystery of the Chinese film industry. In fact, there is a lot of data out there. Conservatively speaking, every year the Chinese film market will grow about 30% for at least 5 consecutive years. This can be guaranteed. I've also seen more exaggerated predictions. Some say that the Chinese film market will reach $200 billion in the next 5 years. To be honest, we're not that interested in numbers. I'm more interested in the concrete growth of the market. As the moderator mentioned earlier, historically speaking, the changes that China has experienced, we've already seen it 10 years ago, that in the first-line cities will always maintain #1 position. So the mega cities will be #1 in terms of the film market, and then the larger cities #2, and the secondary cities #3, etc. But what we have actually noticed is the mega cities are rank #2. And the third rate, and in 2014, we also saw another change. The mega cities actually rank #3, and the secondary cities are #1 in terms of film going. In other words, when we look at these cities, the smaller cities actually are generating more revenues in terms of movie box office than the mega cities. And there are also these, as mentioned earlier, 200 cities with about 1 million in population. We have not gotten the actual figures of the box offices in these cities. So this is one phenomenon that is very interesting, so that the potential of the Chinese market is huge. And also, when we look at the Chinese film market, we have to look at the box office returns. In China, if we look at the total value of the film industry as compared to the number from the box office returns, it is not comparative. And we also need to look at the auxiliary revenues that come along with going to watch a movie. So, for example, a real estate that's related to entertainment. The Disneyland will open in Shanghai next year. Wanda company has also several projects in the pipeline. So not only if we're looking at the box office, we also need to look at the auxiliary returns that are generated in entertainment. Also, in terms of the average age of the moviegoers, it's about 24 years old. So this is a growing group. They will continue to watch movies. So probably if you look at other parts of the world, the average movie-going age is going to be higher. But in China, it is definitely the market for the youth. So we will see that the number of college graduates is actually commensurate to the number of people going to movies. So we really see this is a market for young people. And I hope my explanation has helped for you to understand a little bit more about the Chinese film market. Thank you.
Helpful. And I just wanted to ask one follow-up question. I think we've seen the average age of moviegoers coming down each year. Is that the figures that you've seen as well?
If we look at the numbers carefully, yes, in fact, there is a trend. In 2014, the average weight was 24.3 years of age, and the number is declining. In terms of college graduates, their ages range between 18 to 22. So I do believe that the number will float around 22. And this indicates the kind of films that they're interested in, the amount of money they're able to spend on entertainment, in going to a film. So this is something unique to China as well. I mentioned earlier why are science fiction films not as popular in China? Because those who decide on which movie to see are the female audience in China.
While China's overall population is an aging population, the average age of cinema goers is actually coming down at the same time. Mr. Chen.
Hi, everyone. Good morning. Actually, this panel, I'm sitting in for my colleague, so I might not well prepared for this panel because I have a production background, so I will be going to be focused more on production or even co-production. But that's interesting. I want to respond to Patrick's question to figure out a number. And I've been thinking, and that's good that you picked Jeffrey first from that way, so you can give me some time to think about. Because I know every one of you are already familiar with all those figures if you are interested in China cinema recently. Because those figures are all the figures that presented either in press or during any kind of situation, mostly to the west, to the Western, like France. And for myself, I'm quite sick and tired of those numbers. Actually, this is, to me, it means nothing if our industry or the Chinese film industry doesn't grow into a mature status. So that's why if I need to pick a number, I would pick 0. I'll pick 0 to represent. Why? It doesn't mean that we remain at 0. It means 0. I think there are two meanings. The first one is it means infinitive. With the China market booming every year, and the market opening up, and you know we have a huge population, right? So when the market opening up, not only in tier 1, tier 2 city, even tier 3. Or if I may say tier 4 or some very rural village, they opening up the market in terms of screen number and theater. So that's everything can happen. And also, as you know, in China, for film industry, we do have lots of restriction or regulation from the South. But on the other hand, commercially, we are very free compared to the Western market. For example, we don't have antitrust, so we can develop, we can produce, distribute, and exhibit. So that's another possibility that, in my view, is infinitive. And zero, why? Okay, that's because I very like the PPT Mr. Hu presented. There's a word, say, barbarian. To me, China market is, because for the industry, it's just been opened up like maybe less than 2 decades. I mean, total depends on the market. It's not like the old days. So, so to me, the industry is in a primitive status, in a primitive stage. Like Mr. Chen just said, it's very rare that we have a big revenue from the movie industry, but I would say over 80 or 85, sometimes 90% of the revenue comes from theatrical box office. That's really, really, if you think about that, maybe we are in the age of the Hollywood studio system in the 20s, when the studio setting up their own system, star system, exhibition system, the whole industry getting into that kind of a universe, a unique universe of its own. I think maybe China industry is going through this kind of process now. But of course, the economy changed, right? And everything changed. So we have the big figure in terms of box office, revenue, screen number building every day, theater, and moviegoers. And so I would think that's very interesting. I mean, both myself and Jeffrey come from Hong Kong, actually, but I'm very grateful to be working in mainland China for my career, at least for the past 5 years, because it's one of a lifetime for us as a filmmaker to experience this kind of exciting time, exciting changing. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you very much. Get your breath back, have some water, because I can hear your throats going a little bit rusty already. Because I'm going to come back and ask all of us again, but particularly starting with you, about which companies and which parts of the industry are managing this scale that we've been talking about best. You just said it's an immature industry, but I just wanted to throw out some numbers I checked this morning on the market capitalization of some of the companies that we are talking about today, and they are quite interesting. Alibaba has a market capitalization of 220 billion US dollars. Tencent has a market capitalization of 195 billion US dollars. Disney, which is the largest US media company, is 187 million. Time Warner, 70 billion. Alibaba Pictures, which has yet to make a profit, has a market capitalization of 10 billion US dollars. So just under 10 billion, it's 76.3 billion Hong Kong dollars. And Jeffrey, Boner Film Group, what are you doing? You have a market cap of 661 million.
Very small.
And Huayi Brothers has a market cap of $8.5 billion. I mean, I find all sorts of interesting comparisons there. Alibaba Pictures, which hasn't yet made money as a film company, has got a market cap that is higher than Huayi, which is making profits of 150 million US dollars. And that Alibaba is bigger than the largest US media companies gives it incredible market leverage, particularly when you realize that it also has $21 billion of cash waiting for acquisitions. Things can really happen quite quickly when you've got those kind of numbers and firepower behind you. So back to Mr. Cheng, are you ready to help me with my question? Which companies, which parts of the industry are managing or making use of the scale that we've heard about? Drifting, weren't you?
Yes,
You were thinking, what's your market cap?
Okay. Sorry, I think Jeffrey should be the right person to answer this first. Okay, may I?
No, you can't.
Okay, so just rephrase the question. Just
A moment ago, you were saying the industry
Yeah.
is quite immature,
Yeah.
and we've heard all these facts and figures about scale. And who's making use of this scale? Who's actually adapting to the size and speed of the market changes?
I think, yeah, right now actually China, in many aspects, especially in film industry, is operating on the same basis as in Western society, means capitalist and market-wise and market-oriented. So if you ask me this question, first of all, I would think that because there's a market, because we always have a huge population, but in the old days maybe as the country is still underdeveloped, so the market's not open up, or even people like consumers not that mature. The whole group of specific consumers not that mature. But during the last 20 years, as China's opening up in many aspects, and also with industrialization in not only in film industry, film business, and also in other kind of industry. So it's just come to natural that we require that kind of huge screen numbers and building up. Like right now, even we are building like 15 screens every day, but we still have lots of possibility and opening up another like way of infinitive channel, which is internet, like Alibaba, Tencent, and that's another huge thing. But the interesting thing is that you see none of those internet channel affect the box office. The box office still going up every day, every month, every year. That means it's really a huge market. And as movie go up, growing, the numbers. So that's why we need to do all those things. Yeah.
Mr. Chen, you are representing an integrated company. Your company has theatres, it has internet TV, you have film production. Is it the integrated and diversified groups like yours that are managing the change, or is it the specialist, fast-moving companies like WeChat Movies that are handling the change best?
I think this is an excellent question. We are all shocked by the market cap of Alibaba. But of course, this is not surprising, actually. If you observe the changes in the stock market, then you will see the expectations that the general public has on the growth of these companies. But how will the investors properly use this money? I think that's the important question. If we analyze this at this point, and let's exclude Alibaba's impact on the effects of the market, I think that might be a more scientific approach. When we look at the heating up of the capital market, it shows the interest that people have on the Chinese market. I think if we want to make a prediction, we will see, of course, the different companies such as SMG, the company that I'm heading. Under our umbrella, we have 2 listed companies. And these 2 listed companies were market cap was about $5 billion. Last year, we consolidated these two companies and joined into one listed company. And this company has now been formally approved by the government and is relisted on the stock market. And the market cap is now 160 billion renminbi, which is about $25 billion. So if we will see the changes in the capital market, especially with the introduction of internet media. The market is going to change even more. The barbarian has already entered the gate, if you will, in China. It's entered our homes. We welcome this barbarian, the internet barbarian, because I think with the entrance of the internet barbarian, our lives will be improved. So I think we're going to be looking at really interesting changes in the Chinese market. Thank you.
Is it a specialist company like WeChat Movies that is going to be the fastest moving and best manager of the change? Or do you want to grow into being a diversified conglomerate?
We are a special company. Our shareholders include those from Tencent, also from Wanda. President Li is a shareholder. President Li of Wanda is a shareholder in our company. So in our DNA, we have both internet, but we also have the traditional film industry DNA. So why do we have such a impressive market cap? Because if you look at investors in the Chinese market, they see the opportunities. They see more opportunities than compared to the US. I think the Chinese understands our own market, our own potential. So we understand about the tier 1 cities, the tier 2 cities, the cities with million population, over 200 cities with a million population, yet they don't have movie theaters. So this goes to show the potential is huge in China. So I think companies need to reevaluate actually the value of the Chinese market. And we also have tremendous amount, huge numbers of users. There will be more opportunities for us to collaborate with other companies and to have other possible products. On the internet, we must pay attention to the protection of intellectual property, the cost of IPR protection. So if we look at the Chinese market, 30% growth per annum. If we can protect our users, this will guarantee even higher growth. So we require the funds from other companies such as Tencent, and that will help us develop other products such as e-commerce, for example. We just financed about $100 million recently, and this will help us to boost the quality of our content and also to help us do more work in terms of distribution. Thank you.
Jeffrey, yes. Are you ready for this question as well? Who's managing the scale? Who's understanding the scale best?
You mean the scale of the business? Well, I think the interesting thing about China right now is if you look at the core figures about the film business, as actually I think it's coming to worldwide. Actual film business is not a very big business in any part of the world as compared to other businesses. If you look at the box office number, as earlier on one of the panelists said, the size of the China film market is actually very much the box office numbers, because the other sources of revenue right now is minimum or insignificant compared to the total numbers. And that's actually a very small number as compared to any of the market cap of all those big giants. And the interesting thing about this is, firstly, these giants have grown out from other business, which is not the film. But suddenly, I won't pretend I understand their internal strategy about getting into the film business. But For as far as me, myself, and also Boner or other companies go, we are very conventional, traditional film companies. Although we do have a bit involvement in the exhibition, production, investment, and all the traditional form. And suddenly, in the last 3 or 4 years, the hardest question for you now to define is who are your competitors in China? Everybody, almost like, are becoming your investors. And if you take a step and look at it and say, okay, this is actually a very small business as compared to other sides. And then I do at times scratch my head and why are they interested? What is strategy behind it? Is because, and as far as my company is concerned, is we pride ourselves being able to produce probably the premium content, so to speak. It's a known. We specialize in making high budget films, which luckily we've been doing quite well recently in the box office. But still, those numbers are small as compared to the online transactions and of other business. So I think this is something that's interesting to see because it's never happened in, for example, in the United States at this kind of development mode. So I don't know where this is going to lead us. And as I personally believe, because China market is big because of the population in the first, the future developments that China is going to take, or China film business industry is going to take, will be something that we may not have seen before. I do believe that no one would have the right answer to it. We are all part of it.
Well, I'm going to ask you and Mr. Cheng from SMG a question, because I want to know whether you think the arrival or the scale of the internet companies and the influence they're already having on the Chinese industry is a force for good for the film industry, for the movie industry.
This is a question that we keep asking ourselves internally. My personal view, I can't represent anybody. My personal view is for good and bad. Internally I've been an advocate, a devil's advocate about this e-ticketing that has been happening to all some movies. I do see there we are going over the top. And one of my theory is actually we are burning the candle too fast with these e-ticketing practices, marketing in lately, and it's going to hurt the movie. That's what internally I advocate to all my colleagues, that it's a good thing to do, but don't overdo it. And everybody seems to be overdoing it now, in my opinion.
What I want to say is that the internet has positive effect on traditional film industry. But I want to say that, but in fact, I think it has a very negative impact. Because if you look at the structure of the traditional film industry, it's like a very solid building. But suddenly you have a new force, which is the internet, that breaks down this building. But so, in fact, I think the impact of the internet is negative. But so what can we do to counter this negative impact? Be it television or media or movies. Maybe we need to cast this issue aside. We stop worrying about the internet, but look at internally, what can we do to improve our business? So deal with the changes and transform into the film industry for the future. I think that's what we need to focus on. Be it Bona or be it SMG, that's what we're doing. If Bona represents the traditional film industry, and SMG represents the traditional media, traditional television industry. I think we just need to do our best to make sure we stand in place.
I think WeChat needs to be able to rebut this.
First of all, I don't think you could, it's neither black nor white. It's not all good or all bad. The effect of the internet has often been seen from a very suspicious point of view. But the internet is also changing. First of all, it has changed in terms of interaction with the audience. A few years ago, people would access information just through the computer, but now they use their mobile phones, other devices. So the movies are changing, television is changing, the media is changing. The changes that took place in the West may have taken a few decades, but in China it's only taken a few years. For example, with electronic ticketing, yes, the development may be immature, but the audience loves having this service. Anyone who's ever purchased their movie tickets on the internet will do it again. And they will never go back to the traditional way of buying a movie ticket. So the internet has changed our lives, like it or not. And I think when this change becomes one of scale, then we cannot ignore it. In fact, we should look at possibilities to collaborate. Absolutely, I agree with him. In the last 2 years, I have not bought a ticket in the theater. I bought it with my mobile phone.
Internet. I used to be an internet guy, actually, before I got into movie. I think I used internet way earlier than a lot of people in the world. But just what I was talking about is the current practices, how to utilize internet and integrate it with the current or the traditional business. I do believe there's an exploration process, and then we are in the middle of those. But if you look at some of the current tactic strategy or practices happening, so they're good and bad.
Mr. Lee, earlier on you talked about big data and knowing more about audiences, and I wonder if you could help us understand that, because there are significant regional differences within the Chinese market. And one of the questions I wanted to ask everybody is, how sophisticated are Chinese audiences? I hear from some filmmakers that Chinese film audiences are the most well-read. They've read more reviews, they're more director-driven than any other country in Asia. And yet at the same time, we're seeing just simply colossal numbers for the biggest popcorn movies. Are Chinese audiences being dumbed down, or are they really the most sophisticated audiences around?
I think as a whole, if we look at numbers, there's a huge disparity in terms of the numbers that we see. In Beijing and Shanghai, when we held the film festivals, a lot of cultural films received good feedback. But in the tier 2, tier 3 movies, they're not as sophisticated. Any kind of movies would be new to them. So, for example, in very large cities, the movie market is huge because you'll find people who like all different kinds of movies. In the medium-sized cities, they will follow the trends of the mega cities. The tier 3 cities, perhaps they're less sophisticated. They will pick movies based on, for example, during the holiday season, during Chinese New Year, they'll go for what you call the popcorn movies. From the perspective of internet company, we are also learning more about the film industry, more about viewer habits. And we're actually we have now more data, so we can analyze the market better. As Jeffrey mentioned earlier, the audience is changing, but the business is also changing. As the audience changes, the content also changes, the business will invariably change. So again, I call for a kind of collaboration. We shouldn't just focus on movies with great visual impact or only of entertainment value, the popcorn movies, but we should also promote movies that are more Chinese, more local, more grassroots.
Very emphatically, so explain.
这个
If you look at the changes in China in the last few years, in terms of content, that is, there's a huge divergence. In the traditional film industry, we see that there are movies that get great box office return. For example, the best box office film in history in China. But if we look at the quality of the movies, not only the quality, but we also need to look at the theme of the movies. These movies are usually about young people, about their love lives, about their struggles. Even if the films are not so artistic from a professional perspective, but they've captured the hearts of the movie-going audience. And also a lot of movies are based on internet novels. A lot of, for example, a very famous internet novelist became a famous movie director. So these are what we call the big movies. For example, Fast and Furious 7, Avengers. These movies all are very popular in China. But in the past, not all imported big movies or blockbusters did well in the box office. So there is a change. So there are also some movies that may have done well overseas, but they don't do so well in China. And as for the art films, will the Chinese audience accept these art films? Well, there are a lot of college graduates who may be interested in these more artistic, more cultural films. Obviously, films are very diverse and they interest different people. Some people go into the cinema to be entertained, and some people go into the movie to learn something. They want to learn more about the director, about the stories, the background. So I think artistic movies will also have a place in China in the future. As for the blockbusters or the popcorn movies, I think they will still remain popular. But I personally am interested in finding out more accurate information from WeChat, for example.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, I'm very grateful for that answer because you kind of led me on to the next question that I was going to talk about, which is what is the future of art house movies? We're sitting in the world's biggest film festival here. Well, that's an important question. And I'm going to ask Kerry Cheng to answer as a production guy, but also a guy who's representing a cinema chain in Wanda Cinema Line. There is no specific art house cinema chain in China, and some people think that that is really quite a problem for art house movies because everything is being placed in multiplexes, which may not be the natural home of art house movies.
Okay, first of all, I want to just get back to the last question because it's sort of related to the question you're asking now. Actually, in my view, Chinese audience or Chinese movie lover are the most well-educated and well-informed in the world, because you just pick up any one of the film magazine, consumer film magazine, like the Look, 看电影, or you get on internet of Douban, that's the sort of the Chinese version of IMDb, like that, but it's more film-based, fan-based. You will read lots of good review, in-depth good review with well knowledge of film, of cinema history, and easy you can find anyone from those internet reviewer. They can list out the unique style of a particular director, and they can analyze the industry. It's not from professional critics. It's all from film buff or film fans. So you can tell that they are very well informed, because lots of young people, they love cinema, they will read cinema, and maybe some movie cannot show theatrically in China, but maybe they have some other means of viewing those classic masterworks. I don't know, but at least they are very well informed. So, but you have to realize that right now in China, especially for moviegoers to go to theater, to buy tickets, to buy spend 120, from 60 to 120 RMB for a ticket. It's not only to appreciate cinema art. It's more about a social event and part of their life. And China, with huge population, many young people, they are struggling in tier one city like Shanghai, Beijing. They come from a rural area with a hope to change their life, so they struggle there every day, working like a dog, living under lots of pressure, try to make their dream come true in big cities. So you can imagine that they are living under lots of pressure. I really enjoy the atmosphere of Canada. I already encourage some of my foreign fans, Western fans, to come to China to experience the big city. You always see people living under extreme pressure, and the only way for them to release themselves is the old traditional way, which American people doing in the 20s or 30s. That's especially during the Depression. So go to the theater, okay, to forget the reality. It might seem very old-fashioned the way, but it's true. And also right now is the social means, especially for guys to date their loved one. That's a very
guys and girls.
I'm not trying to be sexist, okay? Guys and girls. Yeah, that's a very good. No, well, the ticket price is actually quite expensive compared to the average income, but it's a very good means. And also for the movie, they can create some topic together to get to know well each other. And so also from my other speakers, they just mentioned that maybe Chinese audience don't fancy a science fiction film, but it's not. They fancy, but for Hollywood movie, okay. So right now, actually, in my view, Chinese audience they have a double standard viewing the movie. When they go to Hollywood film, especially one of those 34 quota film, they are looking for production value, quality, some story or spectacular visual effect. Then might not have anything to do with their everyday life, but can carry them to another world. But when they viewing domestic production, they are more looking themselves in those movies. They need to have something emotionally connected to themselves. Of course, for one thing is right now for Chinese film industry, we still lack the means of technology, maybe the talent to do all those sci-fi movies. But the other way is we're working on really for our people, because we understand them. and we doing things that they can feel connected, and they can, and even can soften their their heart in some way. So that's why for the past 2 or 3 years, there's a genre very popular. Even sometimes the product quality is not good, but still hit very successfully at box market. That's the nostalgic genre film. That's why people can feel.
And if I ask my question slightly differently, I mean, talking about art house movies, but also maybe if I expand the question to include what future, what hope is there for European movies in the Chinese market, which is currently dominated by either the Hollywood blockbusters or the local Chinese movies? Is there any room for anything else?
Well, actually, that's a good question, because in my view, there's no commercial or not commercial. Every movie is commercial because it's a commercial pattern. But fine art, we may say that it's non-mainstream genre. Okay, good fine art movies still make lots of money and still is a great business because the budget and the target audience different. So if you do the calculation right, it's good. I mean, you can look at some auteur filmmaker in China. They're living in a very good way of life, okay, that proof. But as I said before, right now, for the moviegoers, it's something still more on the social side of activity. So for those really fine art film buff, they may not go to theater to see the film, and that will make the theater owner or theater manager, when they programming the film, that will decide on their choices.
Mr. Lin, is a service like WeChat Movies going to be able to help the art house industry? Help art house cinemas and help people actually, help audiences find where these films are playing through things like theatrical on demand?
We are still thinking about how we can help the development of artistic films in China. The point is to allow the viewer to find a film that is of interest to him or to her. For example, we advertise movies among networks of friends, and we've noticed that different users have different interpretations or different ideas of what a movie is about. So if artistic films want to have a place in China, and it needs to find the right collaborative partners through the internet. WeChat can be a great partner. We also have a very big data bank, a database for you to access. So next year, I think we can help more artistic films to gain a better place in the Chinese market, and maybe we can even distribute these artistic movies.
Just talk into it, it will work.
Okay, obviously there's a demand for Europe. There's a demand for European film or European or art house film or other alternative language films, because well, one thing that when I have foreign visitors come, and sometimes I do take them to these private shops, and if you go into, because these people are there for doing business that which is can be risky for them. So and then when you look at all the things. Titles that they are on display, there must be some demand, otherwise they won't display it. They won't have it available. So those shows there's demand for those types of movies. And basically you name it and you'll find it. And then there's some kind of a sign of how there's a demand there. I think what is right now hindering for a real market for art house cinema is, firstly, I think the exhibition space needs to get sophisticated, fine-tuned, and right now we are not there. I think the market is not there to do that. And secondly, of course, it may be a sensitive subject to talk about, but it's true. I think everybody knows there's a censorship concern there. So when you get into more art house they tend to be not every one of them, but tend to be controversial in some aspect, and that may not be something which is be able to 100% guarantee to pass and free importing. So that would be another, for those who really want to watch an art house movie, they will want to watch the original one. So I think the system and the whole market need to get sophisticated. It's not now. I think there will be a space for art house movie, European movie, or other language movies soon or later in the future.
In China, we definitely need cinemas that will show the art house movies. But currently, if we look at the structure of the industry, whether or not we can provide the venue for the art house movies, we need to do that. When I visited Beijing, I saw that there is a theater that they make room. This particular theater chooses to have its own air filtering system. So I use this as an example to show that if the theater has the autonomy to decide on the kind of air filtering system it uses, of course it can decide what movies it wants to show. So I think we need to work together to make this happen. In China, locally produced films that pass censorship will be about 500 or so. But those that actually reach the theaters is probably just half of that number. So half the films, they pass censorship, but they're not shown.
I'm very aware of the time and that this theatre is going to be used for a movie screening in about half an hour. So we're going to move to the Q&A in a few moments. But I have one last question for all of the panelists. Jeffrey, the other day you mentioned in another place, you said, and I retweeted your comment, and it got a lot of feedback, so I'm asking the question again. You said that China is a very normal market when it comes to distribution, although there are exceptions. And I think the exceptions you were talking about were the import quotas, which you mentioned right at the beginning of our discussion. So my question is, what is going to happen in 2017? What are your predictions for 2017 when theoretically the import quotas will be removed?
My prediction, I would think definitely the importer, particularly like association like MPA, they would push for opening. But I think right now, for players or for filmmakers or film companies who have experience in working with China, they will understand and appreciate that you can't push it too hard because the market is still in development, and it's not in anybody's interest to crash it. So I would think that there will be a gradual opening, my prediction. And if you look at the recent performance of Fury 7, Avengers, and those kind of box office numbers, of course, because such numbers are partially dependent on actually dependent on the number of films being imported. I think on the other day, David Lee mentioned this is very interesting. If we assume in America only 64 films English-speaking being released, each and every one of those box office will be like 10 times it is now. So in that sense, it's not entirely bad for these filmmakers or companies to have some kind of quotas, because if it opens completely, they are also facing their own competition among themselves.
Explain. You're saying yes, without the microphone.
I think the cancellation of the quota is an interesting issue, but if we analyze the films that did not have a great box office return, so even if we open up the quota, still only the really top films will make it in China. The world is flat. So, whether you open the quota or you don't, people are still going to choose the movies they want to see. And if the movies that are not well marketed, well promoted, even if you put it in the theaters, it will not attract viewers. So again, I talk about this issue from the perspective of collaboration. In this Chinese market, how can we work together to make movies that are interesting to both the Chinese audience and the international audience? I think that is the point that we need to discuss. We shouldn't focus our attentions on the quota. That is not going to help us. Whatever is going to happen, it will happen.
Thank you. That's a nice positive sounding note. And on that positive note, I'm going to throw the discussion open to the audience and hope that there are some roving microphones. We can't see anything, by the way, because the lights are in our eyes. But if there's someone with a question and a microphone, please go ahead. Is there a microphone in the room and a question? I can see the lady down the third row.
My question is about the percentage revenue from the box office. You're saying that 90% of the revenue of the film is coming from the box office. Do you think the other revenue streams will be developed, or are you particularly looking at WeChat and other online mechanisms to develop other revenue streams that are not box office?
Good question. Thank you. Where's the ancillary and auxiliary revenues going to come from?
Currently, we already see revenue from derivative products. For example, those products that we sell that in relation to the movies. So, or you can pay per view content, pay for content. So this growth is very fast in the Chinese market.
I'd like you to answer, because you talked about theme parks earlier on.
Yes, there are different sources of revenue. One is, of course, the derivative products such as toys, souvenirs, what have you. Also, DVD, Blu-ray, video content. And thirdly is e-commerce. In China, it's very popular to watch a movie and then to buy a product at the same, or right after you watch a movie, you buy the associated product. Of course, there are also theme parks. There's also the linking of movies and games. So there are many different possibilities. In a year or two, if we come back to this theater, we will see the number go down from 90% to maybe 20, 30%. I think if we can see 20 or 30% from box office receipts, that would be very good.
Gentleman in the orange on the second row.
It was a few decades ago that Hollywood was making most of its money within its domestic market, and international was significant but much smaller, and now it's shifted. Does the huge growth in China's domestic market mean that the idea of the rest of the world mattering for business purposes is that it's not at all? Or is there, at some point, do you think, that you will start to genuinely think and focus on international as well as domestic?
Thank you. Good question, Julian. Does international matter? Obviously not yet, is the question. When will it matter?
Well, as some of you know, okay, I have been an international guy. So as a matter of fact, the importance of international revenue as a contribution to, at this moment in time, Chinese films are getting less and less in the relative sense and also in the absolute sense. In the relative sense, because the China contribution is getting bigger and bigger, so as a percentage is lowering. And in absolute sense, and it's more coming from the production concern, where when you design a project, because as we've been talking about, 90% of revenue coming from theatrical. So it's just like you open the office, you live or die on that day. And so as a filmmaker, generally and understandably, you have to focus all your resources or elements to make sure that you have a higher chance of winning. And then that would be naturally, because of it would be hard to please too many audience. And it would be naturally that you have to focus. And then the result will be, if you're focusing to please one particular crowd of audience, why would you expect it to work outside?
As a producer, how much is international mattering to you?
Actually, from the golden day of Hong Kong cinema, we've been trying to do that, and we only found one genre kind of successful in the West. That's kung fu genre. Okay, but with mostly, generally speaking, even I'm here in Cannes this year. Actually, I'm trying to get a North America distributor. Engaging very serious talk with all the major players in the Hollywood to see the possibility of having our film, The Ghouls, getting released in North America. I still find it a challenge, even keep in mind that Wanda owns AMC in US. We still find a challenge about that. It's more. It's not about the technique and the CG level of the product. It's more about the culture and in terms of the logic of storytelling. I think with US audience, I mean, cinema at the birth of cinema, it get mature and industrialized in the West, especially in Hollywood. So for US audience, they already developed a habit of movie viewing in their blood. That's the logic of storytelling, I would say it. So for that, it's really a big challenge. So of course, with a corporate like Wanda, we really have to expand our frontier outside of China, and this is one of our mission. And also, but I still, as a filmmaker, as a producer, I find it very challenging. But I'm also feeling that there's other way to do it. Like what we are doing now, we have last year we have 100% financed a total U.S. movie. It's called Southpaw, produced by the Weinstein Company, starring Jack Gyllenhaal, directed by Anton Fuqua. Very fine film. It's not a traditional way of like a Chinese studio would do. It's not co-production without any Chinese element, no Chinese actor. It will get to China maybe through imported system, another quota system. So, and also I'm engaging some kind of co-production. And also co-production is very hard to do because you need to find a subject matter that makes sense to both markets. Like Jeffrey said, usually we should not to be so greedy. We should focus on one market and make it successful in one market and let it go, let it travel to others. So co-production is the best way to do because it can beat the quota system, enjoy the advantage of being domestic film. But it's very difficult. So I'm exploring other means, including remake and getting a US script as a Chinese, making a Chinese version, all kind of things. So if for your question, how to get out to the overseas market, I think right now we are in the best timing and situation. We should open up our mind as a filmmaker. We open up ourselves to think other means.
Great. Thank you. Do we have any more questions? There's a lady down here on the third row. Can we get the microphone to her?
Thank you. I'll just start it in English then. I know David Lim, you actually majoring in directing when you were in university. And then what made you from an insider to become an outsider? Means like why you change your role from a film person to an IT person? And also similar question to Frank and Jeffrey. So I'm so sorry, Jeffrey. I'm very bad with names. Jeez. Jeffrey, you said earlier that you started to use internet like earlier than other people. Does that mean that you have an IT background? And if that's the case, what made you like transferring from IT to film? Is that because of passion? Thank you.
It's a very inside question, but thank you for that.
This is a great question. First of all, I studied film, and then I started working at an internet company. As you mentioned, what I want to tell you about derivative product is that at first I worked for Tencent, and Tencent, every year, the profit on games is about 3 billion. 30 billion, actually. I want to share this number with you because interactive gaming is now thriving. Interactive entertainment, with the opening up of government regulations, Tencent managed to have a sheer profit, net profit of 30 billion. So this is going to have great impact on the U.S., on the entire market. So users are going to be more interested in watching movies, more interactive entertainment. And this is why, for my personal journey, I studied film, went into internet company, went from Tencent to WeChat. I think my experience will very much play an important role in terms of the collaborative efforts between internet and film. That is my mission.
It's because when I was a kid, I aspired to be an astronomical physicist. So I did scientific research in the early days. And then I do have a degree in IT computing and e-commerce later on. And then I worked for in the early days of internet. I worked for a company called PCCW. So we actually at the time we owned Tencent at the time. And so those were the days. They're all the wrong timings. And filmmaking is a passion. And so I didn't plan to be in film business. It's just an accident of life.
So from astrophysics, down to earth and filmmaking. Thank you very much to our panelists. You've been a very sophisticated and interesting bunch. Thank you to Mr. Ho, who didn't get to come back again, but made a very interesting and helpful introduction. Thank you to the Cannes Market and David for organising. And thank you for being such a patient audience. Thank you very much indeed.